And who's going to be displaying the slide deck? Oh, we got it up. I just was looking at everybody's face and minimized it. All right, Michael, ready whenever you are.
Okay, great. John, you did confirm we have quorum?
We do have quorum.
Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It looks like we've got about 3 action items for you today, 11 informational items, and so we should be able to make everything on time. We'll try to keep on schedule for everyone. I want to open up to any public comment on items not listed on the agenda at this time.
Hi, this is Jennifer from the Advocates Group.
Hello, Jennifer.
Our public comment today is regarding the development of the help desk for Benefits Cal users. We're really excited about the help desk and we appreciate that it's being created. We're looking forward to its implementation. We understand that the help desk is intended to be a warm handoff of a client from an eligibility worker at the county level to a technical support person that's been contracted by CalSAW's project. After exploring the structure of this process with our partners, we're sharing the feedback that we received. As we understand, the current process asks that a client first contact the county to be connected with the help desk. We instead ask that the help desk line be published directly on the Benefits Cal website so that consumers can be linked to assistance when they encounter technical barriers. Based on the current experiences with the county call centers, we know that eligibility workers are working really hard to support the people who call in, but they often have long wait times to get it. The consumers have long wait times to get in contact with the worker about their case. Our primary concern is that the suggested structure of having people call into the county first before being transferred will add burden to the counties, add burden to eligibility workers, and add further burden to consumers. The Benefits Cal website does offer some information and resources for frequently asked questions, but there's no direct link to support for people who are on the website seeking help. And we acknowledge the great work that's being done by staff to ensure that consumers can access essential food and financial support. We recognize that direct access to technical support can make sure that consumers do not have unnecessary burdens in accessing these crucial resources. So we're requesting an amendment to the existing approach to focus on the needs of consumers and reducing any unnecessary impact to county staff. I have one additional comment. During our May public comments, we'd asked for a communication plan for the migration information to be shared directly to the CBO and stakeholder community so that they can be kept apprised of how the migration is moving forward and the impacts to the public. And I'd like to raise again the need to have a direct communication to the CBO and stakeholder community who support a significant percentage of the public in navigating these systems, particularly during and after the migration begins. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We'll certainly take your comments into consideration as we evolve our help desk and as we look at our support plans. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll dive into the agenda. John, does it take us right into our action items?
Yep. Michael, this is Cynthia. Just wanted you to know that I did join.
Thanks, Cynthia. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, first action item is our recurring action item regarding the public health emergency and doing our meetings in accordance with the public health emergency and the governor's state emergency order related to COVID-19. We have been approving this 1 week at a time. We have gotten notice that it looks like these emergency procedures are going to be lifted probably in February. So this will probably be a reoccurring item in November, December, and then we'll be re-examining in January, assuming that in fact they do get lifted. So this is open for board comment, question, or consideration.
Any
Michael,
questions? Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say this is Becky, and I move that we continue our meetings virtually for this meeting and as long as we can into February. But I think we can only do it 1 month at a time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for this meeting.
This Ethan, I second that.
Very good. Thank you, Becky and Ethan. Marla, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Tracy, do you approve?
Yes.
And Chris, do you approve?
Yes.
Great. Deborah?
Yes.
Great. Gilbert?
Yes.
Sayori? Sayori, can you hear me? I'll come back to Sayori. On?
Yes.
Great. Roxana?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes.
Great. Cynthia?
Yes.
Very good. And Sayori, one more time.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right. All right, let's go to our next item. As the board knows, CWDA provides not only valuable consulting services to the county, but is just critical to the work that we do here on the project. And being able, and as we become a statewide organization, really supporting the counties, CWDA has been critical in our planning effort and our advocacy role, planning for legislative changes as we come into the budget season, helping us plan budget, working with the legislature, our state policy, and working through many things. And Christiana is invaluable, as well as the entire staff of CWDA. And they have a very limited staff. And this agreement between CWDA and the JPA, which is in front of you, is to be able to offset that, let them supplement their staff because of the workload that emanates from CalSAWS. So the agreement is from November 1st of this year all the way through June of 2025. The cost is $730,000 and some change. And all of the costs for this are accounted for in our advanced planning document and our budget as we move forward. So Holly, is there any items that you wanted to add on this? I appreciate how you've worked through with council and CWDA to get this agreement that's in front of the board for consideration.
No, just that we did request the funding in our last IAPDU. As you noted, it was approved. So the funds are accounted for, and they were also approved as part of the JPA project budget that the board approved in June.
Thank you, Holly. So this is open for board questions or action, Michael.
John, I have just a quick question. So the mechanics of this, would this be the project's hiring staff on behalf of CWDA, or we're providing funding and CWDA would be hiring the staff?
Yeah, these are all CWDA employees. They're working for CWDA. It is not us hiring anybody for CWDA. Of course, CWDA will coordinate with us and things like that. And it isn't just one staff member. It's really an FTE and sort of sharing that burden amongst multiple staff as they go forward. Hopefully they could supplement their staff, but it might be staff that are dedicated to multiple different projects. So it's really giving them those funds so that they can continue to provide these services and more if necessary.
So is the agreement similar to what the consortium has with the counties to provide staff?
I would say maybe it's a little bit different. We probably have a little bit more authority with the counties and things like that. They're county employees. But this is more sort of like a professional services consulting contract for them to be able to provide a service to us as we go forward. It isn't really sort of direct authority like we can, with our agreement with the counties, if somebody is having some issues or problems, sort of bounce somebody back and coordinate with the counties. With this, it'd be more of a conversation and a collaboration if there is a staffing issue, but CWDA would have ultimate authority on that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from our board members or state partners on this? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
This is Ethan. I have submit a motion to approve.
This is Deborah. I would second.
Thank you both. Marla, do you approve?
Yes.
Very good. Tracy, do you approve?
Yes.
Very good. Becky?
Yes.
Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
Excellent. Gilbert?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you very much. Sayori?
Yes.
Thank you. An?
Yes.
Thank you. Roxana?
Yes.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes.
And Cynthia?
Yes.
Excellent. Motion passes. And I think that brings us to our consent calendar. First item on the consent calendar are the minutes from the September 9th meeting. The action items are listed. Most of them are reoccurring action items that occur on a frequent basis or have been added to this agenda. The next item is approval of the biennial review of the CalSAWS conflict of interest, which is in compliance with the Fair Political Practices Commission. We do updates on that. As we do routine administrative updates, what we're doing is updating the CalSAWS conflict of interest to remove the C4 project director and the LRS project director from positions that are listed on that. Now, who has had those positions? Laura Chavez, as the LRS project director, is our CalSAWS technical director, so she's still covered under that position. And Tom Hartman, as the C4 project director, is covered as our director of common services and procurement. So they're both still covered under that, but these positions do not exist. So it's just an update for that. Then we have a couple of ClearBest change notices to be able to do QA work on some of the items that were passed in last year's budget that you already approved change notices on. The first one, C, with Accenture. The second one, D, is the one for time clocks, which is going to be with Deloitte, which is item E, which is the Deloitte change notice 8 time clocks, which include enhancements to time clock functionality. All of these are within the budget and are within the approval that you guys have already afforded. So that's an overview of the consent calendar that's open for questions or for someone to move. Michael.
Okay, any questions or comments on any of the items that were in the consent calendar from our board members or our state partners? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment on any of those items? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the slate of consent items?
I'll move the consent calendar. This is Chris Woods.
This
This
is
is-
on. I'll second.
Excellent. All right, Marla, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Tracy?
Yes.
Ethan?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Gilbert?
Yes.
Sayori?
Yes.
Roxana?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
And Cynthia?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Michael, that completes our action items and moves us into our informational items.
Great. We're making good time today.
Next slide. Just a quick update. It's really related to item 10, the proposal due date. for our vendor community, and that moved from November 29th, 2022 to January 4th, 2023. The major reason for that is there were a lot of questions that we wanted to make sure we gave good, solid, clarifying answers, that the vendors also had enough time to incorporate them into their proposals. And that does not change the ultimate contract start date. And more news to come as we see how many proposals we get of the three particular options that we have. We did want to make sure that the vendors had a good, solid basis of estimate, and we could have a good, solid comparison between the vendors' offerings. That's the update. To you, Michael.
So Tom, on the proposal due date, that's for any form of the proposals, whether you're proposing on one or all the items, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions from our board members or state partners on this presentation item? Any public comment? Okay, thank you, Tom. I appreciate you ensuring that we're going to have a solid procurement and that we get
Thanks,
the
Michael.
questions answered.
Hello, Michael. This is Arnold. I'll be providing an update on multiple items in this technical update regarding production incidents that had occurred, as well as an update on generation of reports, DER updates, and our output as well. So a number of items just as we prepare to go live with our Calhoun counties here in about a week's time frame. So I'll preface everything the conversation with the fact that we continue to put production as our top priority so that the system is available and stable so that the caseworkers as well as the citizens of California can have a reliable system in which to receive the benefits that they are so needy for. So from that perspective, as we go through these, we are dedicated with our partners to work through any of the root cause action items and improve the overall resiliency of the systems. So I'll start highlighting some of the key issues that occurred since our last discussion, and we'll continue to come back and provide updates in future meetings as we go through with any sort of steps that are taken to further enhance the availability. So the first issue that we ran into included contact center, and this started on September 21st at 6:30 in the morning. And what we ran into was one of our network components became unhealthy, and as a result, it stopped communication between the contact center and CalSAWS. And as a result, the users could not log into the custom call control panel. At 12:45, we were able to work with the network team to revise how that network component, which was what's called the F5, was handling its health checks, and we were able to restore the service. We are working with the F5 vendor on what the overall root cause was for why that health check started failing, which then caused the blockage of that communication traffic. Another incident occurred that impacted Stanislaus County, and that occurred on October 5th, starting at 6:50 a.m. And that's where users were unable to access the custom and default call control panel from the county site. It was related to a change that the TPX network vendor had made to the Stanislaus network configuration. We were able to work with TPX to reverse that change, and service was restored at 12:15. We're working with the TPX vendor on two items. One is the impact analysis that was performed, as well as the notification of the change, because the project was unaware that notification or that change was occurring. So we are looking at enhancing that communication with our TPX vendor so that when changes do occur, we are able to do health checks to confirm that services are operational after those changes are made. If we move to the next slide, please. Now, the issue occurred on October 3rd, and this was related to foster care issuances. And what happened was we actually had two jobs that executed. One was the foster care main payroll job that ran for the 39 C4 counties. In addition, there was a daily foster care issuance batch run that was scheduled. This was a unique occurrence that occurred in the schedule because the combination of calendar day and the overlap there occurs very infrequently. And the net result of that was there were duplicate issuances that were generated with the overlap. They did not go out due to the fact that the system controls were in place that detected the issuances, but it did result in additional cleanup that had to occur from both a system perspective and changing the status from validation error to void, as well as a regeneration of reports that was done on October 8th. There were 9 cases where 2 issuance records were created per the case, and we were communicated those to the impacted counties to address. So while the overall impact of this was more contained within the system, it still resulted in additional questions that came in from the counties, as well as that cleanup of the reports. The team is looking at enhancing that batch schedule to avoid those overlapping of those jobs, even when it is so infrequent that it does occur. So the team's going through the process to identify how they can make that part of the schedule more resilient. Dan, from a QA perspective, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, we just wanted to provide the board with 2 minutes of context on some root cause analysis that was performed with the project team and what we're doing to prevent this in the future. As you can see from that third bullet, it didn't have a big impact on required actions, but because of that second bullet, there was an impression from a lot of users that action was required because there was a validation error on the status. In short, there's 2 exceptions to the batch schedule for this scenario. The first is that if the monthly schedule falls on a Saturday, it's deferred to the Monday. And the second is that if the daily falls on a holiday, it's pushed out 1 day. That's why we didn't have this problem in January because of the New Year holiday. We had it in October because we had the first of the month on a Saturday without a holiday on the Monday. And we're going to have that same situation in April of 23. So the root cause analysis team looked at 4 areas: the people, the operators. That's 1. 2 is the processes, the operation manuals. 3 is the tools, the batch schedule, and 4 is code. As Arnold mentioned, one of the action items that was taken is to create awareness between those 2 schedules to prevent it from happening in the future. The one thing we enhanced after the root cause analysis was an action item to review the opportunity to put something into the code. I call that a belt and suspenders approach. So if the scheduler or process manuals, those things are missed, the code itself can prevent this from happening in the future. That second bullet was resolved through a DCR and cleanup to avoid confusion to the users, but we'd like to prevent this from happening in the future by adding that piece to the code. Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you, Dan. From, if we want to continue on.
Just a second.
Certainly.
I saw Sayori and Gilbert had their hands up. So I thought before they lose their train of thought on this, we can go ahead and ask them what question they have.
Yep, Gilbert, can you go first? Because you'll probably articulate a little better than I am, because I'm trying to technically wrap my head around. I did have some comment with staff, but Gilbert, can you go first, please?
Certainly, Sayori. So here's the issue or the concern that I have, how this all came about. And what it goes back to is communication. So it's my understanding that, you know, as our auditing team was getting these reports and getting these warrants, they saw this issue pop up and I think started to elevate, you know, what's going on, what's happening. And I know, Dan, you had mentioned that there was an impression that there was some action that was needed. There actually was quite a bit of action that was needed because we had to go about, you know, getting the updated, you know, this is auditing. Their numbers and dollars and everything has to be perfect and everything has to be aligned. And their reports were not showing the same information that they had warrants in hand with. So there was a lot of work that needed to get done before we could issue these warrants out, knowing that we were issuing valid warrants and not duplicate warrants or things of that nature. So I think my biggest issue here is that the communication seemed to fail here, in that we were not getting clear direction that, one, it was an issue, what the issue was, and what we were doing to clean up the issue. It took a little bit of time. When it was all said and done, my understanding was that we got the warrants validated and sent out on time, but it just seemed to be that there was not a clear direction, guidance. It took a while to get there, I guess. And then even as we were trying to go through the process, that there seemed to be some delays for whatever reason to rerun the reports or re-verify the status of the different warrants and things of that nature. So I just wanted to communicate that there was quite a bit of work, at least in San Bernardino County, there was quite a bit of work that needed to get done in order to ensure that we weren't issuing warrants inappropriately.
Gilbert, this is John. We concur with your statement on communications, and the team is doing a retrospective on that and reaching out to the counties to be able to look at that. The communication was delayed. We're looking at why it was delayed, streamlining some of our internal processes so we can get these items out there. So we will be happy to report back to the board on our retrospective specific to the communications around this incident.
Thank you.
Sayori?
And so this is Sayori. My staff have the same sentiments, and what happens is, in the absence of information, folks start to scramble, and where all warrants are important, you know, supporting these caregivers and ensuring that these payments are made, they really are scrambling to try to figure out what the issue is. And, you know, Gilbert, I knew you were going to articulate what the communication delay resulted in. So thank you for that. Yeah.
I
think Deborah's
Deborah
hands
had
is
her
up.
hand up.
So yes, there was an impact on the foster care, but in terms of the very first issue that was referred to in terms of the AWS going down, that was hours of staff not being able to do their jobs. And I just need to stress what kind of stress we all are under with our vacancy rates, lack of staff, lack of trained staff. So when the system goes down for like 4 hours, that's a serious impact to business. So I know that we are looking for root cause, for them to tell us, AWS tells root cause. That happened about a month ago, the incident. And so I would just like to learn when do we expect them to respond with some information?
And Deborah, I think that's very timely because the first incident we talked about wasn't specific to the AWS. There's going to be a presentation coming right up, and AWS is on the call here today and is going to be doing some root cause analysis. So I think that's a good transition, because we are going to spend some time and talk about that. And we acknowledge that impact. So we'll take some time in just a few minutes and go over that.
Thanks for bringing that one up too, Deborah. I did want to highlight that as well, the ECCP issues and the fact that it involved the F5, which is the load balancer. We've had some issues with the F5, you know, in different times during the project, even back in the LRS days. A month out, and we're still working on root cause, a little concerning for something that has that level of impact. So we'll wait, John, to kind of hear later in the presentations, but I do think that, you know, timely root cause on something so impactful is really, really critical. And then on the foster care payment issue, to Dan, I wanted to tap into Dan's point a little bit, because our batch handling should have good error handling and transaction controls so that we can't rerun a batch job right over another batch job. So is that what is meant when you said making some changes at the coding level, so that even if even in the unforeseen circumstances, it happened again, that the code wouldn't necessarily create the duplicate warrants. Is that what that means?
That's right.
Yeah. Do you want me to take it, Arnold? Or do you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I would say prior to the root cause analysis meeting, the team had taken an action item to look at the scripting of the overall schedule and how to create awareness between those two scripts, those two different exception schedules that I discussed, Michael. What I was talking about is adding a fourth tier, which is even if that fails for some reason, that the code itself would have an awareness that those two things ran. And that's that belt and suspenders approach, because we would like to prevent this obviously from happening in the future. And we have the same scenario coming up in April.
Okay, yeah, and when you guys have that implemented, if there's a confirmation that that it actually, you run your tests against it and it does prevent this kind of a scenario, I think that'd be good for the board to hear back.
It's on my list to follow up with the teams, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks. Marla, I think you got your hand up.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate that we're getting these very thorough reports on these errors that are happening, or these incidents that's happening. It's really important to me that counties have an opportunity to add to the root cause analysis the impacts in county land, which I think are not always obvious or visible to CalSAWS, and nor would they be, right? There's no way that you could have visibility into our processes, but it's good for us to be able to articulate the time and the activities that these kinds of incidents cause for us. So thank you for the opportunity for counties to weigh in and to share their experiences.
Thank you, Marla.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so we'll go ahead and continue, Arnold, through your presentation.
Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. So this next issue occurred on October 11th. This is related to the Amazon, another component within the architecture, which it acts like the traffic cop for routing transactions between CalSAWS and our interfacing systems, such as Benefits Cal. In October 11th at 4:45, received reports of slowness coming from from both end users as well as internal system alarms. What had happened was, over time, there was what was called a dead letter queue. So basically, when there are messages that fail and get retried, they go into a special queue, and that queue had actually filled up and consumed the space on the MQ service. And as a result, we do have redundancy in that architecture. So some messages were going through the healthy broker, while the one that was unhealthy had blocked messages. And so that's what had resulted in the slowness. We were able to resolve it at 5:05 in the afternoon by cleaning up the MQ storage in that dead letter queue. That allowed the messages to flow through. So during that time frame too, there was an issue with the Benefits Cal with the e-applications, in which there was a subset of the applications that, as a result of that message broker not returning responses, default office assignments were made to the Benefits Cal e-apps. And so as a result of that, the true correct office was not assigned on those e-apps, and they had to be reworked and rerouted. So the following actions have been implemented already around looking at the monitoring of that specific instance and the auto cleanup of the dead letter queue. We're also working with Amazon on the fact that this MQ broker is a managed service. So looking at the interaction with the underlying storage to see what else can be done to avoid exhaustion of that service as well. And then on the e-apps default issue, we were looking to revise the architecture and logic for assigning the default office in the event of an unscheduled CalSAWS API outage. This is on top of the temporary fix or workaround where we have the system pointing to PRT in case of scheduled CalSAWS downtimes. So we are looking at revising that architecture with a long-term strategy that provides additional resiliency for Benefits Cal to do the correct office assignment in the event that CalSAWS is not providing responses, and that Benefits Cal is still able to go through the office assignment logic and have that EAP submitted by the end user with the correct office assignment. If we move on to the next slide. So
Arnold,
this is
Arnold, on that
Yes.
last item, before you leave the last item,
Yes.
I just want to bounce this one back to the project again from a communication standpoint, because this is, similar to what Gilbert was referring to. When something happens, we have this default concept, but that's supposed to be, if everything is not working, it's going to hit this default. But I think the presumption that the counties are continually monitoring a default, I think there should be a more proactive contact to the counties if that gets triggered and things are not going to their normal offices and going into a default, as opposed to just letting the counties find out.
I agree, and that goes to the last bullet point there around configuring an alert on the Benefits Cal to basically send an alert when a default assignment is occurring, so that communication can be facilitated with the counties.
Thank you. We need
So
that.
I think Deborah
Deborah?
has her hand up.
I mean, this is just a simplistic question, but when we say that a subset of users reported slowness going from screen to screen, I mean, by the time somebody is agitated enough to be communicating, there's a lot of people behind them having experienced the same thing, but they're just, struggling in silence. So, but there is a system that you have in place to be able to know when folks are having a slowness when they're going screen to screen, right? It's not just the users having to report.
That's correct. There's actually a monitoring architecture where we are monitoring screen to screen response times. And in some cases, what we see, and in this specific instance, this part of the architecture was lacking that monitoring on it from that queue filling. So the other item that we are executing is going through piece by piece of the architecture to do a review to understand and remedy if there are any other areas of that lack that monitoring and alerting on it. In some cases, it's such a rapid onset that it's instantly felt, and while the teams are responding to alerts, the calls are coming in. But we're getting into the point, or the goal is that we are detecting the impending failure of this ahead of time and seeing the degradation and taking the action before it is actually impacted by it, or the end users feel the impact.
So just to point out then we don't really know if it was a subset of users that reported. I mean, we don't know the actual extent of the slowness and how many folks were actually impacted, because that measure wasn't there. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Yeah, and I just think that opens up another opportunity for improving our communications between the counties and the project on system performance impacts, because we've encountered that too, even previously in LRS, where we talk about a subset or sporadic impact to users, but then when you find out how that hits the ground, it feels much more impactful than just a sporadic set of users. It might look like that on the measuring end. On the monitoring side, you see this many transactions are going through, but this many are getting hit. But when somebody's using the system, if they're being hit every 100th time or 50th time, it's still going to have a pretty significant impact on them. So we just need to make sure that we're tapping into the counties to really know what the impact is on the ground when we go ahead and try to do the assessments.
Yes, and going forward, Michael, I'll exercise additional sensitivity in using the verbiage that I did on this report out.
Thank you.
Appreciated.
Okay, I think we keep moving and we'll stop you if we have questions. Thanks, Arnold.
Absolutely. So this next incident is actually the Amazon West Region outage. So this occurred on September 28th. I have Sam Ellis here with AWS that will walk us through the impact and as well as the steps that have been taken and the next steps.
All right, thank you, Arnold. Appreciate the time to meet with everyone today. Apologies, it's under such circumstances, but it's great to meet those that I haven't yet. My name is Sam Ellis. I'm a solutions architect with AWS, and I work primarily with CalSAWS to help them, scale and build a secure and available architecture. So I was asked to speak today about the outage that we had on Wednesday, September 28th. And the best word I can use to describe this outage was unprecedented. An entire region was affected. Multiple services in the region were impacted by one service that went down. So we'll talk through how that service went down, what happened, like Arnold mentioned, what the impact was to CalSAWS and what's available in terms of next steps and how the issue has been remediated. So that said, let's go ahead and go to the next slide if we could. And we'll take a look at exactly what happened. So again, just to clarify, this was a regional outage that impacted all customers that were using the West region of Amazon Web Services, or the West 2 region to be very specific. So beyond just CalSAWS, every customer that was using API Gateway or any of the services that depended on it started to experience increased errors and latency at about 9:17 in the morning. And all issues were fully resolved by 2:12 p.m. that afternoon. So API Gateway is one of the central services on AWS. There are other services that depend on it, one of which is Amazon Connect. That, of course, runs call center services that are used by CalSAWS in some of the counties. So Connect was impacted by this API Gateway outage from about 9:20 a.m. until about 1:40 p.m. When resolution happened. And so what that looked like in terms of call center impact was, callers dialing in would experience a busy tone or delays when dialing in. Agents experienced errors when signing in, and if they were already signed in, they experienced difficulty handling contacts. So there was a lot of latency and errors, and I think was pointed out by Deborah, effectively this was a work stoppage. So again, for AWS, this is an unprecedented event. This type of outage at the regional level has not occurred before. We've had other outages that we'll dive into when we're talking about the architecture of Connect a little later on that have impacted specific Connect instances or specific customers, but this was the first time it's been across the region. So to get into the root cause of it, API Gateway as a service relies on a caching mechanism. Caching has auto-healing, self-healing built into it, and caches have failed before. However, there was a latent defect in one of the software libraries that was deployed to API Gateway. So when one of the caching mechanisms failed, the API Gateway nodes were unable to reconnect. So what that manifested as was kind of a chain reaction of increased contention between the API Gateway services. So as the requests piled up due to this impaired cache node, API Gateway instances weren't able to reconnect to a cache, and those requests started to delay and turn into errors and timeouts, which resulted into the cascading failures that we've covered here before. So the issue was mitigated during the day through some traffic reshaping and some other tools that we'll talk about in a moment. We had a root cause analysis published, as well as fixes developed and fully implemented by October 3rd, 2022. And so I think that covers the root cause analysis. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone would like to dive deeper into what the root cause was or questions there. If not, we can move on. Okay.
So Sam, are in terms of, you're still covering the West region outage, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I think maybe I'll just hold my questions till you're done with it.
Okay, sure, no problem. So in terms of the West region outage and how it was mitigated, on the day of the incident on September 28th, cache clients were restarted as well as API Gateway nodes in the region. And so this work mitigated the immediate impact and was able to restore services by the early afternoon. In terms of preventing this kind of error or defect from manifesting itself with such broad impact again, requests to cache nodes have been changed to operate in parallel versus sequentially. So now API Gateway nodes can operate in parallel across many cache instances so that we won't have the same kind of contention issue again. And finally, we were able to fully reproduce this software defect and create a bug fix, test it, and roll it out. So those tests have also been added to the regular rigor for deployments for API Gateway. So, you know, future testing will catch issues like this you know, as we move on. You know, one thing I'd highlight is that, you know, AWS is focused on continuous integration and continuous delivery. API Gateway rollouts and all service rollouts across AWS are done with blue-green deployments, bake time between deployments, and extensive pre-production testing. So, you know, adding this additional testing based on this new defect and understanding will ensure that we don't experience a defect like this again. You know, if you couple that with the parallel processing switch, you know, even if some kind of defect such as this were to manifest itself, the impact will be significantly lower and not at the regional level again. Any questions on any of the remediative steps to there? Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide then. Okay, so I wanted to touch on the business impact to CalSAWS. So, you know, again, the outage occurred on 9/28, excuse me, September 28th between 9:20 a.m. and 1:40 p.m. So there was, of course, impact across the contact centers. Again, Connect was a dependent service on API Gateway, so it experienced outages during this time. So inbound calls to CalSAWS, LADCFS, as well as the CalSAWS service desk had this issue where they're receiving busy tones when customers called in, or beneficiaries, excuse me. You know, delays in reaching an agent, and then agents, of course, had errors signing on. Other services that leveraged API Gateway also experienced outages. So Benefits Cal, those services were unavailable because they function primarily on API Gateway, as well as other API Gateway-based services within CalSAWS, such as OCAT and the CalSAWS login system. So, you know, again, there was broad impact from this outage, and AWS understands the gravity of that. You know, one of the things that we strive for most in our leadership principles is customer obsession. And, you know, we hear and understand the impact that this has had across our customers, you know, not just CalSAWS, but in a broader sense of all customers of this region. This was a very significant outage. You know, we've taken corrective steps. We have a lot of internal mechanisms like corrective of error projects and statements that have moved forward to, you know, further analyze and mitigate the issue and ensure that we don't have an event of this scale again. So any questions on business impact to CalSAWS to there?
Yeah, Sam, and I know, do you have more you're going to be presenting, or?
I do, yeah.
Questions?
There's 2 more slides that we'll cover on, you know, basically next steps and what the current architecture is for the contact center solutions.
Okay, maybe I can just do a little preface and you can
Sure.
Speak to that. This is real concerning to me. I know I've been on calls with you separately on this because we have, you know, call center migration that's been coming up, and this impacted the call centers, and the call centers are hugely impactful to the counties. But I'm also looking at wanting to get a kind of clear understanding of how AWS is proposing to layer the security protections for us, because ensuring that API Gateway works properly and is one thing, but then what are the provisions if it doesn't again? I mean, what could happen? Do we have a way to have better failover for API Gateway like we would for, say, the CalSAWS application itself? Because the API Gateway is sort of connected between many platforms.
Right.
So it has the potential to actually have more impact than even having our case management system go down, where we could bring it up in another instance, maybe in another region. So I know that's maybe a complicated question, but I really do want to get at the root of it, because some of the underpinning infrastructure things like an API Gateway or like our authentication system can actually impact more than one platform, and it can be devastating to us. So when you're going through, if there's a way for you to connect and explain to us kind of what is helping close those gaps, as opposed to just the fixes related to API Gateway itself.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do my best to weave that in. And again, if additional questions come up or you guys need some additional depth, you know, please jump on and we'll talk through it. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. I want to lay out how redundancy works within a region, so we can kind of differentiate a little bit between a regional versus an availability zone outage, and talk a little bit about that to kind of set the stage for some of the questions that Michael just posed. So the way AWS regions are designed, they consist of multiple availability zones. And you can think of availability zones more or less as independent data centers. They're really independent locations, but the idea is that you have redundancy of operations across those different physical facilities that are typically load balanced for redundancy and resiliency. So Amazon Connect out of the box has that built in. It's deployed at the region level and runs across multiple availability zones, so that fault tolerance exists. And this is not to say that we haven't had issues with Connect that are isolated to specific availability zones before. I know, Michael Sylvester, from the LA perspective in Michael's area, there have been outages for their specific instances before in the past. But this, just to put a fine point on it, this outage we experienced on September 28th was at the region level. It's different in that it impacts all of it. So I think that gets to the question that Michael was asking of, how are we going to deal with outages that are region wide or are API gateway wide? So we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about that. One thing to note is that the service commitment for Amazon Connect, just as a base level, is 99.99. It's 4 nines, or roughly 5 minutes a month of outage is the expected amount. So we blew that out of the water. I'm the first person to say it in this month, right? It's like we had I think 5.5 hours of outage. So this is multiple years of breach of this SLA. CalSAWS will of course be receiving a service credit for that, because frankly we missed the mark. The Connect service leadership team is also looking into how they can make Connect less dependent on these issues. So there's an internal process to AWS called a COE, or a correction of errors, where service teams go through and evaluate, essentially go through a 5 why operation and evaluate how these issues happened, how they can make themselves more resilient and decouple. That process is currently underway for Connect, so I don't have specific details on how that will proceed, but they are looking at how the call centers can become independent of other services such as API Gateway for outages like this. And then last, to dive into what Michael was asking about before in terms of how are we going to deal with redundancy and independence of these services. So the consortium, Accenture and AWS, continue to partner and evaluate different options on how to increase availability. There are other options available for Connect to do active-active or active-passive failovers that are currently being evaluated. I don't have specific details on what implementation or selection plans are, but we are continuing to evaluate that with the team. At this point in time, assuming the service commitment is met, the current solution is one that we recommend across all of our customers. It's already redundant and built across the availability zones, like I mentioned before. But we are looking at how we can evaluate, or we are looking at how we might improve that availability and look at different solutions to increase that. So I don't know, Arnold or John, if you'd like to add anything to that statement, but it's, effectively what I'd say is it's a work in process. We hear the pain and understand the needs, and we're looking at how different services can best help that. But essentially, the 4.9 SLA of Connect is what we're relying on, and the internal teams are working to make that a reality.
The only comment that I would add, Michael, on that is we're looking at those other options, looking at costs associated with those other options, seeing if there might be a light option issue that occurred this one time. Is there a way to keep calls flowing on maybe a lighter footprint to the counties? And I think that assessment is still coming up, and I think an action item for us as we gather that more information, including budgetary information, frequency information, and what we can do to expand that resilience as we look at this one incident is something that we need to come back to the board with as we gather more information.
Yeah, and I think it'll be really important to be transparent like we always are as a project and approach this thoughtfully. because, LA County alone is going to have 752,000 to 1 million calls a month at it when we put our call center on it. That's ridiculous in terms of impact if we're out for several hours. So yeah, I have a heightened level of concern around it and want to make sure that we have all of our bases covered here. I do see some other hands of some other directors, and I want to allow them to speak on this as well. I see Sayori had hers up, and then Marlo's went after. Sayori?
I'm sorry, you all, I'm in a remote area. So it's also my understanding that this issue caused login issues. And from a case management standpoint, folks were backed up. And I believe that all counties weren't impacted. And I'm just trying to figure out, was there something different within our process in terms of being able to log in?
Sayori, on that monitor, the ForgeRock services which are used for login were not impacted by this. But we'll definitely take that back because I was unaware of the login impact from this. We do know that because it was contact center, that we were having issues with communications because of the gateway or the API gateway. So there were issues between Benefits Cal and CalSAS, for example, because that gateway was impacted. So if that would have caused some other issues with transmission of data.
Marla?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sam, for being here to talk to us about this. I'm Marla Stewart from Contra Costa County. One of the things I'd like to put on the table is the possibility of considering where does the service credit go? Because when we have huge outages like this, and this is a huge outage, this is an enormous cost for counties. We have our staff working 5 hours. I mean, we're paying them for the 5 hours during the outage. They're likely going to need to do something like the equivalent of 5 hours of overtime, where we're now going to pay them time and a half to get that work done because the same amount of work is coming through tomorrow. And so, and our allocations are capped. So there's no extra money for us to be paying for this kind of overtime. So I would just really like us to consider a mechanism to potentially demonstrate county costs and to consider some of the service credit going back to counties.
Yeah, I think, John, that may be more of a question for you or kind of an open discussion topic. The credit from the AWS perspective goes back to the payer for the account, but I imagine there's some creative options that could be considered beyond that.
Yeah, the credit within our service agreement is for the AWS services. And we would have to look at our agreement. I don't think the scope of our agreement handles for that services, the reimbursement of staff time of that, but it does credit the consortium for those AWS time for that period. So Marla, we can take those back on distributing and how we look at those items. But we have to be within the confines of our agreement, and we could have council and our PMO look at our agreement, but we are enforcing our agreement to our full effect at this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia? See your hand up?
Thank you, Michael. And I just want to say I certainly echo Marla's thoughts as well. And Michael, yours in terms of the tremendous impact because it was significant at our child abuse hotline and just having to pivot with our team. And so our management team, to their credit, were very effective and were swift in pivoting to figure out how we could come up with a backup plan to reroute some our calls from the child abuse hotline, if you will, to other areas. And so I think I heard you speak a little bit on it, Sam. I just want to highlight how important it is to have a backup plan in place, a plan B in terms of how we are able to, because 5 hours, of course, for all of us, and certainly in our child abuse hotline, is a big deal. And then it's the blowback from it and having to, you know, alert board offices, try to alert our advocates, alert everybody. So to let them know that, you know, this is kind of what we'll need to do. And thankfully, one of our systems, our IT, work collaboratively with our program folks to say, hey, one of our other systems was not totally dismissive, but just having to figure that all out. I'm hoping that as a result of this, it doesn't, you know, unfortunately happen again. But if it does, that we have a universal from the project plan that we can be able to communicate and message out to everyone. This is another system or something that you could utilize as we attend to what the issue at hand is. So, and I know that the communication came out to the leadership team, letting us know, John, you guys were really good with that. However, 5 hours is a long time when you're talking about child abuse hotline calls and wait time and all of that, and for us to kind of pivot and figure it out. And so just wanted to highlight that. And in addition, say that I do appreciate the communication that did come out, but it's just kind of that aftermath and having to notify our board, children's deputies, and everybody and clients in terms of what to do. So, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you, Cynthia. That's a great perspective. And Sam, this is something I think that you've got to really take back to your leadership and in terms of their strategy approaching supporting the project going forward, because we're putting a lot of eggs in this basket in terms of the call center. And you know, whatever things can be brought to the table that could be helpful to John in terms of not blowing our budget, that can provide, you know, active type of opportunities, because the traditional will have like 25% capacity or 10% capacity is not going to fly when you've got 700,000, you know,
right.
You've got 50,000 calls in a day coming through, 100,000 calls in a day coming through. And it will definitely stain Amazon.
Yeah,
And,
no, understood.
you know, and I know that that's not what you guys want. So, I mean, we really have to look at how do we, you know, make sure that this is successful for us, and also that you guys are able to help us deal with the, you know, the budgetary challenges associated with creating these extra, you know, failover options.
Right. Yeah. No. And you know, I would say the gravity of it is not lost. You know, Cynthia's statement is one that we felt internally. You know, as the account team just working during the outage. Right. We understand the impact that this had on citizens and on the business that you guys do. So we are very seriously considering that, both, you know, in leadership and at the account level, and working with the team in partnership to come up with a better solution in the backups that'll prevent this from happening again.
Well, we're going to be leaning on, what was your reference? You guys are passionate, customer
obsessed. Yes.
Obsessed. Okay. Well,
We
this is
are.
a chance to show us how obsessed you guys are.
Happy to do so. Happy to do so. And if
we're going to be a big customer.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you know, happy to do so. And honestly, if there's problems that arise or difficulties that you guys see, please reach out. You know, we're more than happy to be transparent and work through it, because it is a team effort and it's a partnership to get this stuff done. You know, the scale of the calls you guys take is enormous. It takes a lot of people and a lot of folks to keep that machine moving. And you know, we're happy to be a part of it and want to make sure you guys are satisfied with what you get in the end. So
well, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of this that helps provide a good path for us going.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Hey, Michael, just one thing, maybe a clarification, Cynthia, on the child abuse hotline. CalSAWS doesn't manage that, but it was on an AWS instant outside of CalSAWS that was impacted by the AWS outage on that. So I know so that's
No,
how pervasive it was. It was outside of the managed services. It was just the AWS outage for both CalSAWS managed as well as other customers. And on that, I think DCFS is a direct customer of AWS on that, not through CalSAWS.
Understood. Thank you for that.
And Sam knows that they hit other places in LA County. So these are discussions. Yep. That's part of the whole leadership, you know, taking a look at the big picture here.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I think you can proceed with your update, but you can tell that we're very interested in this.
Yeah, no, and we're definitely here to support. We came today to read out on the root cause and actions that have been taken. But we are here to partner and make sure we have a good solution going forward. So I think with that, we'll go back to Arnold if there aren't any other questions. I think the remainder of the readout is his.
And the point here is we will be coming back to the board as we gather additional information. We talked about the resiliency and redundancy. So more information to come, but we did want to spend some time. Appreciate Sam being here to be very transparent about this significant outage and to continue the dialogue. So back to you, Arnold.
Yes, and to echo, we are working extremely closely with Amazon, between Accenture and Amazon, as we look at the architecture overall for contact center, as well as that API gateway and options on how we can do selective failovers, et cetera, to help improve the resiliency in the overall architecture in the event we have these extremely rare events. So definitely a partnership between the consortium, the project team, the counties, AWS, and Accenture as we work through this. So the next discussion point that we were bringing an update to the board on is in regards to the production of the analytics reports and dashboards. So what I have done is we've created, this chart represents 2 months of production time between August 1st and September 30th. And so as we see, we use the 6 a.m. completion point as the targeted completion for the reports and dashboards. And there's 12 different events that occurred where we exceeded that time frame. 4 of those were caused because there's some upstream dependency. So if we look at the reports and dashboards, those run after the critical processing that does the benefits calculation during our batch schedule. And some of that benefits calculation has strong dependencies on counties and the fact that CalSA sends a file over to counties and then receives the file back. And we have to wait for that file to come in before we are able to continue the processing. So on 4 occurrences, there was a delay there that caused that front end of the batch schedule to be delayed, which then translated into delays in the back end when it came to the generation of the reports. There were also 4 special runs, and so these reflect the COLA runs, for example, to where we ran the largest COLA in state history during the period in September. And so that also, those COLA runs had to be complete and took a longer period of time because those were the special runs and had the impacts on the completion of the reports as well. And then there were occurrences 4 times where there was delayed processing that was within the schedule. And for each one of those, we are going through the root cause analysis. And for many, we've actually implemented the fixes that improve the performance of those specific report periods. So in looking at that overall, there's also some larger initiatives that we are looking to implement, because we do, in the course of doing the testing for our major releases, the testing that we've done running up to the conversion process, we have been performance testing the reports and the overall batch schedule to say that when we bring on the additional 2 counties at the end of October, that we won't see a degradation in the generation of the reports. And that testing did show that we will be able to adhere to that 6 a.m. timeframe. In addition, there are some additional changes that we're making and are planning to make to the reporting architecture to give us additional time and buffer, because we know that the timely production of those reports and dashboards is important to the counties from just a conducting of the daily business. So one of those changes was put in this past weekend, where we can continue to do some upscaling of our report backbone, the click and the printing architecture to increase the throughput and bandwidth. In addition, we're going to be, through the next couple of changes, looking at splitting the analytics reporting jobs into smaller components to allow for what's called multi-threading. So instead of having a train with 3 cars on it, we're going to have 3 different trains on 3 different tracks so that they can run in parallel, and we can adjust the production of those reports and take advantage of some of the lag times in the schedules. So that'll help shorten the overall time of production of the reports. And then we're also identifying through the daily monitoring that occurs, those reports that are specific and complex, and they're the larger, and looking at how we can either simplify, break it down, or even move some of that processing into the daytime hours so that the amount of time that's required to run this in the evening is reduced, so that, again, we can shorten the overall elapsed time of those. So the team has implemented changes, has additional changes in the pipeline, and will continue to work to reduce those times when we exceed the threshold for producing those reports.
And Michael,
So I'll take a pause there for questions.
I just wanted to jump in real quick, Arnold. One of the reasons we wanted to make sure that we put this on here is because we've been talking about batch performance, scaling of batch. The successful tests that we've had on converted data and sort of the risk that we've been tracking coming down on batch, and reconciling that with, hey, I see the risk coming down, but why are the reports late? And those two things aren't adding up. And this is that attempt that says we still have work to do on some of the reports architecture, go to some streaming architecture. We've had some very special batch runs for colas and histories that have impacted those things. And then there's some dependency on other batch jobs that could delay those reports. So we're monitoring this as its own stream, looking at the remediation of that, while we're still looking at our batch jobs as we scale up for the 58 counties and running those items, and being able to do that and do that successfully so that we can mitigate the instances where we do have the reports that aren't available at 6 a.m. or soon thereafter, and reduce the frequency. So we'll be tracking through this. We'll be seeing the impact on each one of these, especially as we add additional counties.
Yeah, John, and I appreciate the transparency on this, because I know this has been one we've been chasing for a while, and we're still at it. You know, we're still trying to knock this one down. And I think maybe also just getting a good understanding of what the reports are used for at the county level, and which ones have a more significant impact, so that you guys, when you do look like how you have to stack them, you can stack them appropriately. Some of them we may be monitoring on litigation, we have to monitor them, and it's actively monitored. And others we look at the end of the day. So there's a little bit more windows of when we can, tolerate a little bit of delay in a report release. So I think understanding the counties and how they're used will help you guys as well. Minimize the impact of this. Marlo's got her hand.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I've also made many comments in meetings about reports, and I just want to really express gratitude here for the ongoing attention to the reports and really understanding the importance of them for our operations and counties. So thank you, John, and to your whole team for, like Michael said, continuing to chase this. It's much appreciated.
Okay, if we move on to the next slide. So the next topic, it involves the data application of the data retention policies to the CalSOS platform. To set some context on it, before we did the conversion of the C4 counties onto CalSAWS, we actually applied the data retention on the C4 system. And that way, when we converted the data, that we didn't bring over the data that fell outside those retention criteria. We had not run that on the core CalSAWS platform since the original conversion of LA onto it. And so, but prior to the start of the CalWIN coming over, we structured the purge process to actually apply that data retention policy to the CalSAWS platform so that we would be a consistent basis. Because if you look at the CalWIN conversion, that data retention will be applied prior to the conversion as well. So that way, when CalWIN comes on, all counties will be in the same state from a data retention process. And we had started that process on August 13th. We completed it on October 8th. And so where we stand right now is from a data retention process, the CalSAWS platform is adhering to those data retention principles. If we move on to the next slide. So approximately 1.6 million cases were eligible for that data retention, and we actually ended up removing close to 26.7 million documents out of the system. We are up to date with that as we head into the wave 1 conversion. If we move on to the next slide. If in the event that people need to go back, or there's a need to go back, we do have a full database backup that was created at the start of the data retention purge process on 8/7. And therefore, we have a snapshot of everything that was there before the purge process ran. It's been stored on AWS, and it's going to remain available for the next year in case we have to refer back to it. So that is the backup in the event there's any questions around that, and it will be available during that period. If we move on to the next slide, please. Then this next topic that I'm going to provide an update on is actually around the CalSAWS business continuity and disaster recovery. And this is more from just an identification perspective as we look forward for the CalWIN counties, and also just to provide an update on how our last disaster recovery test that was completed in this past October, roughly 2 weeks ago, ran. And so if you look at the CalSAWS core application, there's 2 measures that you look at. One is what's called the recovery time, and that is how fast are you able to restore services in your alternate region. And then the other measure is the recovery point, and that is really looking at your data in what is the amount of expected data loss that could occur in the event that there's a catastrophic failure in your primary region and the data is unrecoverable in that primary data region. So for the CalSAWS core platform, both the RTO and the RPO is 24 hours. For the ForgeRock platform, that architecture is different due to the fact that ForgeRock is a service that is used as a front end and really the identity management solution, as well as the fact that on the core CalSAWS platform, we're dealing with a lot more data than you are in ForgeRock, which drives the RTO and RPO. On ForgeRock, the recovery time is 15 minutes, meaning that we can switch services over to the East region within a 15-minute window to still allow those ancillary systems to operate and log in. The recovery point is 15 seconds, meaning that the data store that contains the credentials and such is on a streaming basis over to that East region, and with a 15-second snapshot period. So very little data loss associated with it. If we move to the next slide, as we ran through the weekend, we actually conducted the test on October 2nd. We declared the emergency at 6 o'clock, which was production down. Then we failed over to our DR region. This is our US East region, and started our county validation at 11:45 in the morning. We completed that validation, shut down that US East region, so that's our DR site, at 2:45, and we failed back over to the west and brought the west, which is our primary production zone, back up at 4:05. And then the county validation completed at 5 p.m. So if you look at the total duration of the test, it was roughly 11 hours to take the services from the west, move them to the east, bring the system up, do the validation. The validation was read-only transactions. We weren't doing any sort of update transactions. Then we shut it down, brought the services back to the west to restore it. So from an overall scope, if we move to the next slide, we had covered our online and web screens, our Forage Rock, Central Print, Benefits Cal also successfully failed over to the east, our batch process. Out of scope for this phase was the analytics, our AMP reporting, our Salesforce partner interface, some email, texting, ad hoc reporting, and the EBT interfaces. In upcoming events, we plan on enhancing or expanding the scope of that DR test to involve those capabilities as well. We did have imaging included in that, so imaging was also a participant in the test. Contact center was not included because there is not a instance of contact center in the east. So we have some lessons learned coming out of the test that we'll be looking at from just an internal application and the failover process. We are pleased that the test was able to be fully accomplished within that 11-hour period, which is a positive when we look at the 24-hour RTO and RPO perspective. So, Michael, with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
So Arnold, this sort of brings some of the things we talked about earlier with the contact center. I'd include Salesforce in that for us as well. Just that we are able to get to a full DR across all of our platforms, and what the plan is so that we know that the DR works in all those cases. I know this is requiring some planning and work with AWS on the contact center and Salesforce part because they involve the API gateway. But is there a timeline for when we would know that we could actually fail everything over from west to east?
Yes, and that's what we're working on at the next DR test, which will be in about 6 months. We'll expand into those additional services. So that is, and then in the upcoming meetings with JPA and PSC, we'll bring an update as to what that specific schedule is looking like.
Okay, yeah, well, please keep the board apprised of that because I think this is a risk that we need to close, especially with the Calhoun counties coming aboard. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Does that conclude your presentation on this?
That does.
Okay, any other questions or comments from our board members or state partners? Okay, hearing none, any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we can go ahead and move on to the next item. Thank you, Arnold.
Thank you.
All right, hello everyone, Lisa Solis here. I'll take us through this item regarding the C4 read-only data system. So after C4 cutover last September, we had a requirement to host a read-only version of C4 for a 12-month period. That 12 months has gone very quickly. So we now are in a position where we're looking to decommission this environment. The reason we're bringing it to you today is because originally the decommission was scheduled for the end of September. Information transmittal went out to the counties very late in September, not leaving the counties a lot of time to process this information and to be ready for the decommissioning. Subsequently, we heard the counties and we extended the decommissioning from the end of September to the end of October. This, some of the reasons this is being decommissioned is it's running on software that's out of support, and there are some security vulnerabilities related to the old C4 system. That being said, we know that the counties are still on a periodic basis accessing this environment. And I'll talk a little bit about the primary use case there and then the actions the project is taking to address that. The primary use case is related to some hearings and prosecutions that counties may be participating in. There is a series of data tables related to e-applications that came in from C4 Yourself, the legacy portal for the former 39 counties. Those data tables reside only in the read-only database. They were out of scope for conversion. Subsequently, we, through an SCR in August, we have brought those data tables over. The rationale for that is that during these hearings, we know that counties are going in and pulling up that original e-application and looking at the signature information and using that information as is needed. We, as part of the CIT associated with the decommissioning, there is reference to an interim process when this environment is decommissioned, and that is to use the council's ad hoc request process to provide the case information so that information can be pulled out of these database tables and provided to the counties. The final solution is associated with the change on the bottom of this slide, 247516, where we will be, creating pages. That's one of the leading solutions so that counties can, again, self-serve to get this information in the manner that they need in the time they need it. It's currently targeted for 2303, but we are accelerating this change and seeking to get it in earlier than that March release. I did want to address a few other points. So I did get a ping during this meeting. In fact, I know that there are some questions out there. So in the scope of full transparency, I wanted to address those. So one, in terms of usage of this environment, we were able to go back. In the last 5 months, we did see that 22 counties and a little over 200 users have accessed this environment. In the last 30 days, it's 15 counties and about 70 odd users. There are about 6 counties that are accessing this environment several times a month, and that's Humboldt, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Joaquin, and Shasta counties. And again, the use case here is for those hearings. So, we understand that it's not until information is given to the counties that there is a need to log in and pull this data. One of the questions I received was, because it's unknown and often has a time frame associated with it, the information needs to be provided. Today it's real time because they can self-serve. With this ad hoc process, it may take several days to get that information back to the county. So that was point one that I wanted to clarify, given that it does have to go through that process. And there may be some other things in the queue. The second item that I wanted to clarify was, in this interim stage, the output that would come out would be, queried against the database and likely in an Excel format. And that would be what is provided to the program integrity staff, hearing staff, depending on who the requester is, during this interim timeframe. And again, we are looking to accelerate the final change. We will work with, in order to accelerate, we would go with a, kind of a non-standard process in that we would seek a couple of users who could work with us on a frequent basis as we iterate through a design versus going through the larger governance process so that we can move this forward quickly. So I will turn this back to you, Michael, because I'm anticipating questions this morning.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. I have a quick question on the usage. Did you find out whether it's being used for fiscal purposes? Did you say that for hearings?
Yeah, it's everything was converted over per the the mappings of data from C4 to CalSource. The data that was not converted is e-applications, and based on the counties that we've talked to who've been accessing the environment, it is to get this data that is available through the online pages in the legacy C4 system.
Okay. And I see Gilbert's hand up, so he probably knows what they're using it for. So Gilbert.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Lisa, for the information on this slide. But a couple questions that I do have does center around like the time frame that it's going to take. To your point, a lot of times we need it when we need it, and there's going to be this delay in getting the ad hoc process to get the information out. And so I don't know if there's any type of level of commitment that we can get that says we will get these requests turned around because we're going to tag them or flag them or something to say we'll get these turned around in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. And the reason why is because we could potentially lose a hearing, we could lose a fraud case, we could, the DA may not decide to prosecute because we don't have particular data and we didn't realize we needed it, and again, to your point, we have it real time right now. If we need it, we go in, we grab it, sign, seal, delivered. Now we're going to have this request process. So that's question number one, some kind of commitment in response to our requests. The second one is going to be the manner in which we get it. And that question is kind of twofold. One, the manner in which we get it, in that it's probably going to have to go into like the that repository that only certain people have, the web portal, I think they call it, that only so many people have access to this. So now we're going to add another layer of person being able to get in and get the data and get it to the person that was requesting it. And I know that's a reason because of security and PII and all that kind of stuff. But again, I believe that's where it would be probably the response would be dumped into. But then second, do we know what this data is actually going to look like in our request, and that it'll be acceptable to an ALJ or to the DA or something like that, because it's not going to be the same as it is right now. So these are the concerns that I would have that we need to try to figure out ways to address. And I know the release coming in March of next year will definitely help with some of these things. But between now and March, as you said, we have plenty of counties and plenty of users hitting this on a monthly basis.
Thanks, Gilbert. Yeah, you're exactly correct. Going from self-service to a request process is going to add layers and several days. I think from an ad hoc request perspective, I know this, I looked to the consortium is going to hit their queues first. It is likely to be measured in days versus same day.
So Lisa, let's take this as an action item to be able to look at those questions specifically and come back at the November JPA with those items. And also, as we're coming up on the end of the month, take those things into consideration as we look at the type of decommission that we're looking at. So I think we have to take that as an action item, and we need to come back. And then I see Deborah's hand up.
I just to that point, the parameters. I mean, generally when we have a hearing and we're preparing the documents, we do have a few days, and we are able to let them know if we have access issues, try and negotiate an extension if required, but knowing how long and what's the maximum amount of time for turnaround as some sort of a guarantee would be helpful.
So specificity and meeting those timeframes is important. with a delay as we're going from real time to, a few days. We have to be able to hit those few days on that.
Yeah, and we will definitely, Gilbert, in terms of the output and acceptability, as part of that action, we will work with your program integrity. We'll work with the arms to get names from some of the counties, and we will do a quick poll with the counties, because I think that's going to tell us very quickly whether the interim output will be acceptable for ALJs.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And whatever we can do to just help, just help us get what we need, so that way we can continue to do business without having these extra little hurdles to jump over. The easier it is for our staff to do their jobs, the better.
Understood. Back to you, Michael.
Okay, any other questions or comments from our board members or our state partners on this? Hearing none, any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Michael. All right, so CalSOAR's release update. So we just wanted to spend a few moments looking at some of the upcoming CalSOAR's releases as we head into late autumn and into winter. So starting with November, we have our release 2211 that is going to be available on Monday the 21st, Thanksgiving week. That release is in our system test environments as we speak, and through last night, we're about 70% executed and about 60% passed on that. The other exciting news on 2211 is the county validation test phase has begun. We have about 6 counties participating in this release testing, and they're in their first full week of testing this release. So it continues to be on track and making progress there. As we head into the December timeframe, I haven't called out all the priority items that will potentially be on the slate. I did want to focus this slide, particularly we do have some COLAs coming up and some batch processing. So we do have, as typical in December, in both CalWIN and CalSOARS, we will be looking to run, we have minimum wage run, SSA COLA, as well as a CAPI COLA. So the caveat here, of course, is we always need those final numbers. And the good news there for the SSA COLA is earlier this week, we did get an email from DHCS, our partners, with those draft numbers and draft ACWDL. So we will begin our planning and move forward into our development and testing efforts for that SSA COLA. One point that was mentioned yesterday at Project Steering Committee, we are looking at a lens of the COLAs as it relates to the Wave 1 counties and all migration counties. In fact, and next month, we will have more information around COLAs and PHE lift. So I won't go into that in too much detail, but as it relates to Wave 1 and SSA COLA, which will be run on or about 6 weeks after they're cut over to CalSOARS, the case review guides that are going out do indicate those cases that are in scope for that COLA. So that brings focus and priority for the Yolo and Placer counties as they work through those case review guides, the yellow banner cases. As it relates to the CAPI COLA, that again will be run in both systems, and those 2 counties are actually part of the CAPI consortium, and so they are unimpacted directly by that COLA in the CalSOARS system. It will run in CalWIN as their cases are carried by Sacramento County. As we move into January, we have our January release targeted for the 23rd. We will have at the end of January, and I'm going to ask Rachel to join me in a moment here to talk about a Benefits Cal release. There's some integrated changes going in there around support requests. And then February, the target at this point would be to look at running the FPL COLA in both systems. Again, that's dependent on getting numbers from CMS and through DHCS, and we are having ongoing conversations about that and looking at the timing of that. And again, next month when we walk through the PHE lift update, we'll have more information around COLAs as well. We have ongoing dialogue, really a great collaboration with DHCS, CWDA, Council staff as we prepare to provide more information around the lift and the impact on all counties, from the LA, former C4 counties, as well as our 18 Calhoun counties and the path through those migration waves. Next slide, please. This slide just gives some highlights for 2211, 2301. I know there's an attachment to the packet that has the detailed policy items and in more detail. So this is just giving you a sample. And when you look through the 2301 column, you will note that we're starting to see some of those changes in preparation for the PHE unwinding. There's a requirement to provide an informing notice out to participants. We're making an update to some of the pre-pop packets, as well as creating a report for the unwinding event. So we're going to start to see a little bit more about the automation changes that will be coming with the PHE lift as well. With that, Rachel.
I am Rachel right now.
Oh, sorry,
no problem.
Sorry,
Gilbert has his hand up, so I wanted to make sure he had a chance to ask what question.
Yeah, hopefully it's really quick. And I'm sorry if you said it and I didn't hear you, but on that special release in December for the COLAs, is there going to be any downtime beyond normal, like a Saturday not going to be available?
So typically in CalSource, we are up and the online application is up and running. We do typically start batch a little bit earlier on those days. So if counties are working on that Saturday, there may be intermittent slowness in the afternoon. We typically will start running the batch around 5 o'clock on Saturdays when we're running, starting the COLA processing. I know I've received a couple inquiries already. So at this point, the Saturday is available because I know you're starting to schedule overtime and you need Board of Supervisors approval on that. I will take a quick action and get back with, send an email to all RMs to confirm the current thinking on that, because I know it's timely and I can't wait for the next board meeting. But typically that day will be available as we start to run the COLA.
Great, appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, no.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. I will add a couple highlights on the system improvements for the upcoming releases. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, there are some integrated activities that we are working right now. And it is on the slide, it shows as release 2301 is planned for January 2023. And for this month, Benefits Cal and CalSOS teams are working together for a system improvement in the area of support requests. Support request is an existing feature module available for customers today on their dashboards. However, with this system improvement, there will be 3 new main categories added in January called supportive services, counseling support, and keep your benefits. And underneath of each area, there will be multiple supportive services options, as many as 15 in total will be available for customers. And following that, we are also working in an integrated manner as we look forward from January onwards. We are working on multiple system improvements in the areas such as CalWorks time clocks, which John already, I think, highlighted in the beginning of the meeting. And in addition to those, growth and the release of information system improvements also planned for the spring 2023. With that, Michael, I am handing it back to you for any questions.
Okay, any more questions from our board members or state partners on this presentation? Hearing none, any public comment? Okay, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Anna. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
Good morning, JPA board members.
So I'm going to be taking you through the first part of the section, which is to go through the wave 1 readiness. And as this slide depicts, we are just T-minus 10 days from go live. So very exciting time for both the project and the wave 1 counties. And I won't do a deep dive into this slide, but as you can see, many activities have now concluded, and there are still a handful of milestone activities left for wave 1. So let's go on and move on to the next slide. So the next slide, these next couple of slides revolve around project readiness. And so the blues, many readiness categories and those areas are now showing complete. There aren't any tasks behind schedule. Some activities remain and will complete and are on schedule for many of the greens, which are now occurring from now until next week, next Thursday. So in terms of contact center readiness, right now both wave 1 counties are participating in the model office testing, and they're progressing on that and working through those questions and answers there. From imaging perspective, imaging performance testing concluded. There were no severity 1 or 2 defects that were identified, and the county export of their legacy images will continue until cutover begins. Benefits Cal for training for both the Yolo and Placer's contact centers and help desk, those were completed on September the 15th. Training was delivered to the CBO community on September the 22nd. And additionally, we have one green item there for Benefits Cal, and that is because the Benefits Cal communications plan will continue and is on schedule and will be completed by 10/31 or October 31st. From a conversion standpoint, the conversion team continues to work on resolving the outstanding CDT defects, and we'll hear a little bit more from our conversion team just right after the section here on those details. Next slide, please. Training, instructor-led trainings are still occurring in both Yolo and Placer counties in person. They are going well and will continue all the way through next week. Communications and an OCM standpoint, the October newsletter was distributed on October the 13th, and the next meeting for the Wave 1 Change Network Champions does take place next week on October the 25th. From an implementation front, readiness packets and dashboards are being distributed weekly to Wave 1, with the last packet on track and on scheduled for next Wednesday, October the 26th. The Go Live packet was released on October the 7th, and working sessions were scheduled this week for Wave 1 counties as well, and those have also completed. Working sessions, internal project working sessions are scheduled this week and will conclude, I believe today, to work on any additional conversion awareness items that may need to be added to that Go Live packet. And if there are additional awareness items from a conversion standpoint, an updated Go Live packet will be released, and we anticipate that any of those updates will be released that very first week of Go Live, October the 31st. Around county prep, those activities continue to occur, and we're heading right into the last week of county prep activities. Yolo and Placer are both attending both the office hours in the morning and the debrief calls in the afternoon. As of the data from this particular packet, Yolo did complete 73% of their activities, and Placer had completed 69% of their county prep. So with this 1 week lag, and as of yesterday, the latest and greatest is that both counties have reported 100% completion of configuring their county maintained security roles, and all of their expected staff who need access day one of go live. All of those staff have logged in and validated their CalSOS credentials in the CalSOS system. So great job to both YOLO and Placer on meeting these two very huge milestones. And these are mandatory activity end of next.
Young, you're freezing up. Young, your internet is unstable and freezing up. So if it keeps doing that, maybe Catherine could jump in.
Sorry. Okay, is it better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I'm actually wrapping up. Post-implementation follow-up meetings took place this week to YOLO to answer any of their remaining questions in terms of on-site support. And both orientations for virtual and on-site support concluded yesterday. Those went well and answered many of those project staff questions. And then last but not least on this slide here, county ad hoc. Again, Placer does not have any reports to refactor. YOLO has completed 5 reports and 11 are in progress. And just a reminder that these reports are not critical for YOLO's go live. Next slide, please. All right, so both YOLO and Placer are on track for all 7 readiness areas. And they do have some remaining tasks that you'll notice there in that in the bar graph there, where these are primarily tied to the remaining activities that are left for the county exports of legacy images, model office, and county prep. So great job to Placer and YOLO counties on completing all of their readiness tasks thus far. And so I think we're ready to go for next week and green light next week, which many of you will be in attendance on Wednesday. So that completes my updates for Wave 1 readiness. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Catherine to cover cutover calendar and county communications.
Perfect. Thank you, Young. And good morning, everyone. I am the other implementation manager and want to begin the second portion of our Wave 1 readiness, talking about what to expect during next weekend. So we're going to take you through a little bit of a journey for the different CalWIN counties, for Placer, for YOLO, for all of the customers. And then also we're going to highlight CalSOS customers and CBOs, as well as what's going to be available for the remaining 40 production counties and the staff, and what to expect starting on Thursday, October 27. So starting at the very top of this visualization of this timeline, we're going to first highlight for all of the 16 CalWIN counties. So this is waves 2 through 6. And I'm going to say this a couple of times just to make sure that it's very clear that for all 16 counties, there is no change to system downtimes for the CalWIN counties or your customers. It is business as usual. So essentially what that means on Thursday, the 27th, just like every other Thursday this year, CalWIN is going to come down for your normal system downtime nightly, beginning at 8 p.m. And it will be back up on Friday morning, business as usual at 6 a.m. Now, where we start to change a little bit in that regular schedule, we're going to first highlight what the experience is going to be like for the Placer and YOLO County customers. So the second line that we're going to highlight is for My BCW. So beginning at 5 p.m. on Thursday, October 27, My BCW will not be available. Placer and YOLO County customers will be directed to apply for benefits on different websites. So right now, even there is a banner message on My BCW providing websites for customers seeking to apply for Medi-Cal through Covered California and CalFresh through Get CalFresh websites. In addition, if customers during this time would like to check their EBT balances or have more general information or be connected to the county-specific websites. All of that information is available on the My BCW homepage through the banners, as well as a number of announcements that are going through the system as well. Now, I do want to just highlight that applications received during the cutover weekend for Placer and Yolo counties will be held and then sent to Benefits Cal beginning on Monday, October 31st, when all the systems are up. And we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. Now, the third swim lane that we want to highlight from a stakeholder perspective is all of the staff for both Placer and Yolo counties and what they will experience from a time frame. So CalWIN will remain accessible between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Thursday, October 27th. And that's a really important hour window, because that's when workers will be able to complete all application registration received through My BCW. CalWIN, beginning at 6 p.m., will not be available for staff. Similarly, OCAT is not available beginning at 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 27th. Now, pending the conversion effort and a successful outcome, CalWIN will be available for Placer and Yolo County in read-only mode beginning on Friday, October 28th at 6 a.m. All right, now we're going to transition a little bit to talk about Benefits Cal timeframes. So during the cutover weekends, Benefits Cal is available for individuals and CBOs who choose not to use MFA to log in, as well as for anonymous applications from Friday at 6 p.m. through Sunday at 8 p.m. There is messaging on the Benefits Cal homepage currently to explain the available functionality throughout the weekend for both customers and CBOs. During the cutover weekend, customers can log in to Benefits Cal accounts. However, they will not be able to view their EBT balance or some of their case information until Monday, when CalSAWS is online. Customers will be able to apply and upload the documents for those anonymous applications they submit. On Sunday, Benefits Cal will go into maintenance mode, meaning that there is no access to Benefits Cal beginning Sunday evening at 8 p.m. And Benefits Cal is unavailable for customers and CBOs during this time. Users are provided links to the CalSAWS resources page. Applications for the 40 counties will continue to be accepted and held until Monday when CalSAWS is up. And as a reminder for the CalWIN County customers for Placer and Yolo, they are directed to get CalFresh in covered California once My BCW does come down on that Thursday. Now, for the CalSAWS production operations in the current 40 counties, the following timeframes are relevant. CalSAWS production, the contact center, and the IVR is not available beginning on Friday, October 28 at 6 p.m. Imaging over the cutover weekend is available, but it is only available in read and view only. EDR is expected to be in sync with real-time production data with 42 counties beginning on Wednesday, November 2nd at 6 a.m. Now, CalSAWS production counties will continue to have EDR access throughout the cutover weekend after pausing that replication to EDR. Daily reports will begin generating during the Tuesday evening batch window for access in CalSAWS on Wednesday morning. Monthly reports will begin generating on Friday, November 4th in the evening during that batch window, with access to all CalSAWS counties by Monday, November 7th. The last piece of information is really important, especially for staff. For the CalSAWS PRT, Sandbox, training, and the LMS, there is no changes to downtime, and it will be available throughout the cutover weekend. And then, of course, pending the cutover schedule for all systems, the conversion between CalWIN and CalSAWS, and the cutover activity plans, including the county click-throughs on Sunday, CalSAWS production and Benefits Cal will be up and running for 42 counties and will be available on Monday, October 31st at 6 a.m. Now, there is a CIT that was actually submitted earlier today that provides this information, including the infographic you see here. So again, there is more information that is also being released. Now, if we can go ahead and go to the next slide, one of the things we wanted to also highlight was the communications from a county perspective of what you can expect starting October 31 for 6 weeks post go live. So the two items we wanted to highlight from an ongoing and a daily support call is that there are 2 phone calls every day. The first is the county support call. This is facilitated by the regional managers, and they will have these meetings both individually with Placer and with YOLO, and then on a region basis. That information will be served as part of an input into the larger county stakeholder call. The county stakeholder call will be conducted at 4 p.m. daily. The implementation managers, myself, Yong, and a few others will be the ones to facilitate that meeting. That call, that meeting, will include all 58 counties. The agenda for that call will first and foremost to hear from YOLO and Placer counties. We will also provide a round robin to hear from the other regions for the existing production counties as well. That call will help understand and provide bi-directional communication regarding known issues or any known issues and resolution status of those items throughout the day and throughout the week. And then lastly, the output of that county stakeholder call that's at 4 o'clock daily will be the post-implementation support tracker. Every day we will provide that via email to participants that attend the stakeholder call, outlining those key issues and the resolution, and also that tracking mechanism to be able to understand it, to keep track of any of those items that will require further information, perhaps an additional fact sheet, or will require work from the systems collaboration from the project team. And that will be provided daily for 60 calendar days post go live. And with that, Michael, I will actually turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Young. Catherine, can you reiterate for me the downtime for the CalSAWS counties who are in CalSAWS during this cutover weekend?
Yep. For the existing 40 counties, CalSAWS will come down on Friday, October 28th at 6 p.m.
Okay, and then it'll go through Sunday.
It will actually go through Monday at 6 a.m.
And they'll be read-only available, correct, Catherine?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
Okay. Okay, any comments, questions from our board members or state partners on this? Any public comment?
Hi, this is Jennifer from the Advocates Group.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks for sharing this important information. I really appreciate the diagram and the way it's structured. And this is detail that I think we haven't had before. So I really appreciate being able to see the up and down times of the different systems. I am planning to share this with our advocate partners, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to share this intentionally with the broader external stakeholder group who are impacted by these downtimes. I, again, will certainly share it as broadly as I can, but there may be folks who would need to see this that either aren't able to attend these meetings or aren't on my list. Is there any way that we can make sure that this information goes out widely to the external stakeholder community?
I think we have posted on calsas.org under this meeting folder, and we've sent out that CIT that has that as well as Jennifer, you having that. So I other than having it on our public website and bringing it to public meetings, I don't know what further distribution that we're looking for. I think it's been accomplished.
I was thinking of the stakeholder list that CDSS hosts for the CalSAS stakeholder meetings. Perhaps CDSS might be willing to share this information out.
We can take that under consideration. Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
then
for
my,
your- Oh, I'm
yeah, and
sorry.
my
Go ahead.
second question on slide 38 was about the updates that are going to be made to the county stakeholders. Will there be spaces, or where could external partners get updates about the post-migration experience and what's happening?
Quickly on that, our public meetings, I think you have access to all of our emails. There is not a specific meeting other than the stakeholders meetings that we have and those other types of forums that we have. Those are update meetings with the counties. Those are really just to hear how things are going and to see what our support model is for them. So there isn't anything specific other than the existing meetings that we have, and it should be business as usual. And if you guys see any anomalies, we have Ask CalSAS, and Jen, you have our email addresses.
Okay, thanks, John.
Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. Hearing none. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Young. We'll go ahead and move on to conversion, I believe is the next item.
All right, good morning, or good afternoon, early afternoon. Okay, so what we want to do on the next couple of slides here is talk through where we're currently at, to a certain degree where we've been at and where we're currently at. So when we look at this slide, I think we've presented this in the past. This shows the defects that we received out of converted data testing, county data validation, and user acceptance testing. So clearly those were all executed at separate times. However, we've been tracking all of the defects that received, and then when we deliver them into a golden data set, which is a converted data set for the project, and in some cases for other downstream phases respectively. Our exit criteria when we completed CDT is we didn't want to, at go live, have any priority 1 defects or priority 2 defects. And let me try to set the stage on both of those. And I think everybody does understand this, but priority 1 and priority 2 defects really mean there isn't a workaround for the caseworker to do. It could have an impact, and most likely does have an impact on eligibility, on issuances and noticing. And so we wanted to make sure that we did not have a priority 1, priority 2. Happy to announce that we do not have any. We are still working on about 5 priority 2 defects to make sure that they get resolved in time for the go live next week, and we're on track for those. But we're on, as I mentioned, we're on track. And so then what's left is priority 3 and above, and so it's priority 3, 4, and 5. We typically don't have any priority 4s or 5s, but priority 3s would mean that there's a workaround in the system with that, meaning we call it an alternate procedure, and we have that documented. Those do not have an impact on the 3 items I just mentioned. It doesn't have an impact on eligibility. It doesn't have an impact on issuances, and doesn't have an impact on noticing. However, it does represent an awareness item that we want to make sure that we can communicate to the counties. And so what we're seeing on this slide is that number all the way to the bottom right is 77. That's the total number of priority 3 plus defects that we would have open at the time of go live next week. And so for each of those, we've had a dedicated strike team that has performed an analysis on these. It remains still in process if we identify anything new as well, but a strike team to assess the impacts on these and determine if the impact is high enough, meaning total number of case counts or total number of program counts. If the number is high enough, then we likely need to communicate this to the counties and include it in the go live packet. So our teams have all been working together, the conversion team, the application teams, the implementation support teams have been working to ensure that this information is available in the Go Live packet. The one thing I will note of those 77 items, during our analysis, what we've identified is a vast majority of those have a very low impact. So, but those that do have a higher impact, and sometimes it's a bit subjective, right? 50 could be a high impact in some cases, and 50 could be a low impact in other cases. But where we identify high impact, then we make sure it's included in the Go Live packet. And in some cases, if we need to generate a case list, then we can generate a case list. So this number has been going down as we've been progressing right now. And technically, it's not 77 anymore. It's actually 75. So that's an update real time there. If we scroll to the next slide, it's a similar type of view of where we're currently at today. With some graphics and infographics associated with those. So if we look at the top left, the red items there represent the priority 2 defects that are aligned to a golden data set or a delivery. For us, it's really a delivery or a deployment. And what you can see there is all of the priority 2 defects are associated with wave 1. You will see and this is late in breaking too, because we've updated this since last week, but we did have one item that came through in triage. We've since moved that over to the wave 1 go live after we've been able to do our assessment and prioritize it for wave 1 go live. So at this point, all priority 2 defects are associated with the wave 1 go live. And in the remaining 75 are associated with deliveries post wave 1. The same type of information is down there on the bottom left. And then if we look to the bottom right, that really represents those items, as I mentioned before, that we're going through the impact analysis and ensuring that we have an alternate procedure that we can communicate to the counties. This is what I mentioned in terms of that strike team, making sure that we've done our due diligence. And it wasn't just one team making an assumption that it's a low priority, it was a higher level team making this decision. So the project has done their due diligence to make sure we've included this information into the Go Live packet where necessary. And then that top right really represents where we've been, as I mentioned on the previous slide, where we've been and where we're currently are at. The blue line was our plan, which was to do what we could to attempt to close out everything. And then the green dotted line is where we're at today, where you'll see that ending up is essentially where those 77 items live is, and that's going to be the difference between, or difference when we go live. For the wave 1 counties, those 77 items will not get resolved, obviously. However, for the wave 2 through 6 counties, they will continue to address those as well as anything that comes up as a result of what the wave 1 counties identify. Now, when I say that these will be open for the wave 1 counties, we will still be supporting them. So, if it's something that comes up in a command center or a help desk ticket, the conversion team obviously will assess it and determine if there's something that we can do for them if the alternate procedure is too cumbersome for them. So the conversion team is always here to support the counties after the go live. If we can move on to the next slide. We've been talking about the auto case review and the yellow banners for quite some time. Over the past month, we've been able to achieve a targeted 70 to 72% EDVC match rate. And for everybody who hasn't heard this before, let me explain the yellow banner cases. Every case that converts and every case will convert will have a yellow banner on it. As we go through the conversion process, we run this auto case review. And where we get a match on the 7 odd items that I'll show in a subsequent slide here, where we get a match on all of those items, then we remove the yellow banner. And what that means, a yellow banner means we really want the caseworker to review the converted case, but when we take it off, they no longer need to review it. And that then opens this case and opens these programs and the data respectively to be run by the CalSAWS batch processing each night. And so we've achieved the 72%, or we're at 72% right now, or when we ran this back on 10.5, we've frozen the code. And so this is where we've landed. We obviously need to run this during the cutover window, but we're expecting similar results when we do so. So if we scroll down to the next slide, this next slide really represents more of an accounting of that 72%, and it really does the inverse. It's the amount of work by the workers. And so 8% of the converted cases that are active programs would only need to be reviewed by a caseworker. And if you can look down to the very last two items, they represent that, or we've categorized them into two areas. One, the SS income COLA that was mentioned a little bit earlier. We want to prioritize those, obviously, because that's a COLA that will be run in the month of December. And so on the case review report itself, we've been able to identify those so counties can target them. And then lastly, the remaining 6% are those cases that will be reviewed based on their redetermination date. And we understand the counties are planning to review these cases in that manner respectively. And then on the last slide here, these represent the different areas that we attempt to match on. And so on the 72% match, these are the items that we've matched on. What you'll see here is where we've mismatched, where we didn't get a match. And those are the cases and programs that will show up in the case review report that we provide to the counties post go live. We should expect to see very similar results as to what we're seeing here, because we've just run the EDVC match, or the auto case review. And so you can see where the distributions lie. I know we've shared this on various occasions in other forums with counties. We see a very similar and consistent output as we've been executing through. And with that, Michael, I can pass it back to you and see if there are questions.
So Keith, where are we going to land projection wise? You might have covered it here on the yellow banner cases that go live.
Where are we going to land for the wave one counties?
For the wave one counties, yeah.
Yeah, this is where we expect to land right
This
here.
is the projection. Okay.
Yeah, this is the projection. And so just so you know, so as I mentioned, this is the run on 10.5. And so, you know, we hadn't been experiencing the 70 plus match very often. And quite honestly, it was because of the data. Once we get the data, the longer we have the data, the more stale that data gets. And so what we did in September is we requested a new data set, and we executed that. And we got the results that we were hoping for, obviously the 70 to 75%. And then we continued to run that after running some various fixes, and we were seeing very similar results. So my expectation is this is what we will see, 70 to 75% when we execute the cutover. And these are the distributions that I would expect us to see as well.
And the directors and their teams in those two counties have the documentation on how to try to clear the banners post implementation.
There's excuse me.
On that.
There have been various forums of communicating this. One in particular, I think this just came out just recently by the ISS team, was a CIT on how to process the yellow banner cases.
I think that's going to be important for the directors to have as a tool. Okay, any other comments or questions from our board members on this very important presentation and conversion here? Okay, hearing none, any public comment? Oh, I see Marla. We'll go back to directors and state partners. Marla?
Thank you. Sorry, it took me a minute to get my hand raised. Really appreciate this report. And I was just wondering if anybody from Yolo or Placer is here and has anything that they want to add or comment on.
This is Greg from Placer. Yeah, we're very familiar with the yellow banner cases and have had good information and ample time to prepare for. So I think we're in good shape.
This question, Deborah.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, this is Tanya from YOLO, and I would say the exact same thing. We have had a lot of conversation and we're good to go.
That's great to hear.
Deborah?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. No, I was just wondering it, and I'm glad that they're so confident. It's awesome because when I see that benefit amount mismatch, it makes me feel like, okay, just how much of a mismatch are we talking about? Are we talking about cents? Are we talking about something under $20? What does that mismatch really look like? Because that's over 2,000 cases for a small county, and I'm just wondering about timelines for them to be able to address if there's anything of real significance in terms of that benefit mismatch that's that's adverse to the client.
And Deborah, the one thing that we've done on that could be a penny, or it can be a larger mismatch that exists there. Just a reminder, the benefits will roll. So continually, they'll continue to receive that, and the recipient will not see a change in their benefits. We've also have reports that say when the upcoming COLA is going to be run in a time frame that the counties have been informed on, and some tracking on that particular item by case, so that both Placer and YOLO can make sure that they're working those cases that will be impacted by the cost of living adjustment, so they're not exempted out of that COLA. So they'll be running through that. So they'll go do the redetermination. The caseworkers will look at that and they'll run them as that part, accept that EDVC, and the caseworker will validate that it's right. And then CalSAWS will take over on that. There might have been a data element that was left off, or a data discrepancy that was left off, that caused either that penny or that more significant data discrepancy on that. Most of them, when it's systemic, have been rectified by the team in order to bring that match rate up to that amount. But these might be one-off items, and the team is still drilling through and looking at those items. Keith, you want to add in on that?
You covered it. I think the most important thing there, Deborah, is the cases and programs. They continue to, yeah, absolutely continue to roll. We established that on day one of conversion.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other comments from our partners, board members and state partners? Okay, any public comment? All right, thanks, Keith. We'll go ahead and move on.
Thank you.
Good morning, JPA. This is Peggy Macias, and I will be giving you a final update on our UAT. So on this first slide, this is just really a reminder of the information that we presented at last month's JPA. So you'll see here that the UAT testers executed 1,018 scenarios. With that, there was that produced a 97% pass rate and a 2% fail rate. They also logged 359 system investigations or findings that we took further to analyze. And I'll just add that all of the UAT testers received limited training. So all the CalWIN testers, they had some WBTs that they went through. We also provided them some overview sessions, but they did not receive the full-blown training that they're going to get as they migrate on to CalSAWS. So those findings that they logged included questions and or requests for clarifications for things that they didn't understand. In addition, there were 35 SCRs that were logged. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I'll give you the breakdown. So again, there were 359 system investigations or findings that your folks identified. Of those 359, 74 were identified as system defects. Of those 74 system defects, 71 of them were fixed during UAT, and 3 of them were fixed or are being fixed with the 2209 baseline and or priority release. That 71, those 74 system defects were primarily in, a large portion of them were in the GAGR area, which we anticipated it to be higher because that really is new functionality. We also had findings or defects identified in the reports area, and then there were the remaining items were sprinkled throughout the other categories of the item areas that were tested. Of the 285 items that were identified as working as designed, 46 of them were associated to 35 SCRs. Those 35 SCRs, 12 of them have been prioritized and 23 of them are in the queue to be prioritized. So what that means is they're getting work through the committees to discuss and determine where they lay as far as the priority in comparison to everything else. So they're being worked through there. In addition, there were 12 county enhancement requests that were identified, and this was primarily in the reports area. Those 12 CERs are currently in the queue to be prioritized. So those are being worked through the reports committee, that is being done later this month or early next month. The remaining—
Peggy, one item on those CERs, what I've been informed by their reports team, and please validate it, is that those enhancements are to assist in reconciliation, but they do not impact the accuracy of the report. So they're nice to be able to aid the counties in reconciling a little bit easier and things like that. And they're probably good items to have and prioritize as enhancement, but they do not impact the accuracy of the report.
That is correct. The data is not impacted by any of those CERs. They are items that they identify that will help them make it easier as they facilitate their reconciliation processes. 166 of the 285 were sent to the ISS and/or training teams to be further evaluated. 91 it resulted in enhanced training emphasis in the instructor-led training components. 43 are included in WBTs, quick guides, or job aids, and 32 of them are included in the Go Live packet and the migration FAQ. And then the final 61 items were reviewed and closed. So these are items that required no additional action. They were duplicates, or they were just clarified for the participants, and they required no further action. Next slide, please. So finally, in our reports area, one of the things we learned was our CalWIN counties quite often go into the website and pull the latest templates for their reports, and they use those in preparing them to submit. In CalSAWS, there is one template that's used for all the counties, and changes to those templates are done upon receipt of client the correspondence from the state, ACLs, ACWDLs, CFLs, etc., or county enhancement requests. So they work to, our committee works to prioritize those fixes or those changes to the templates, and that's when those templates are updated. In preparation for go live for all the counties, once they have migrated over to CalSAWS, there will be plenty of post-implementation support by the teams to help the counties as they begin to reconcile their daily and monthly reports and submit them to the state. In addition, there is currently enhanced communication that is being sent to the counties now, and that will continue, and there will be a section added to that will focus on the findings from our UAT effort. So lots of things happening still. We anticipated that this was going to be an area where counties would have questions and we would need to have additional support. So the project is prepared to fill that for them. So with that, I will turn it back over to Michael for any questions.
Thank you, Peggy. Any questions or comments from our board members on UAT? None, hearing none. Any public comment? Hearing none. Great. Thank you, Peggy. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next item.
Next item is the review of the red risks for waves 2 through 6. And we have a single red risk, and this is regarding the CalWIN conversion cutover window at risk of completing past the 84 hours. And as we've been discussing over the last several JPA and PSC meetings, we have been working with the counties on a revised conversion process that we believe will fall within the 84-hour window. And that's really breaking up the conversion event into 2 separate tasks. One is to have the main conversion that occurs over that conversion weekend for the active cases, as well as those that are closed within 2 years. Then subsequently, in another 2 weeks, we will have what's called the cutover C event. And that will include the closed cases that are greater than 2 years. And it'll be combined with the cutover A event for the next wave. So the project team has been working with the counties as well as DHCS, CDSS on looking through the ramifications of that proposal, as well as ensuring that the caseworkers will have access to the data required for them to process the cases. So far, the feedback has been positive as we've worked through the scenarios, and we will be able to obtain actual confirmation of the impact that has on that production window as we create our mock conversions coming up in the next couple of months for wave 2. Based on the paper analysis, we believe that it shows that we will be within that 84-hour window. And that is why we are showing the trending of the issue to yellow, because we believe we have the approach forward. That approach will also apply to the subsequent waves. So if you look at the 258.3, we will apply the same criteria to our waves 3. And then if you look at the next couple of page or the next page, it'll be waves 4 through 6 as well. Dan, I'll turn it over to you to add the QA perspective on this as well.
Just 2 minutes of context for the board. I think about 6 months ago, you saw 9 red risks. We're down to this one. We had 3 as of 2 weeks ago, but 2 of them flipped to yellow. One of them is the overall QA risk 268 for waves 2 and 3. And that one tracks a number of sub-risks related to application readiness, covering things like CDT, defect resolution, which Keith covered earlier, as well as GAGR readiness. We do have some functionality rolling out on the 26th of this month prior to go live. It covers performance items like the imaging subsystem, as well as batch, and then it covers county readiness. One of those county readiness items just flipped to yellow last week. That's related to the organization and change management plans, the CDGs, which Rachel typically discusses. What has happened there is the wave 1 CDGs have been completed, and the lessons learned there have been implemented into a master CDG guide, which will be implemented in waves 2 and 3. So those items are now yellow. Likely review them in the future, but just wanted to provide context for the fact that you're not seeing those risks today. Back to you, Arnold.
Thank you, Dan. Michael, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Okay, I'll open it up to our directors and state partners for any questions on what was presented.
Hi, this is Ryan from Department of Social Services. Quick
Thanks,
question. Is there anything sort of magic about the 84-hour window? I mean, I realize that it's a time period where we think there's probably lower activity, but if we keep working at these things, you know, and decide we need 86 hours to do it or something, what would be the impact of something like that?
Ryan, this is John. I think the big thing on that is it's sort of business process timeframes, and you have to set a line in the sand for a goal to be able to do that. That's what LA set for LRS, and we thought it was a very good goal when you start looking at that time frame and system downtime and lack of availability of systems. So there's nothing magic about that. if over the cutover weekend, it might be an extra hour, an extra 2 hours and things like that. But we're really pushing the team to be able to see that, because providing services to the public and continuity of services and making sure that the counties have the support of the systems they need to deliver benefits is our top priority. So that's why that goal was set, but there is nothing magic on that except for what is the tolerance and what is a goal in there that the counties could go without automation support. Or diminished automation support, and that was set as probably the outside parameter, and we continue to use that.
That's great, and thank you. And don't get me wrong, I very much appreciate you guys picking a goal and managing towards it and thinking creatively about how to get there. So definitely not trying to suggest in any way we should deviate from that. I guess my just thought to the group is, if at some point it looks like we actually are making major trade-offs, is it then worth revisiting? Do we need to consider having more time? But I don't think we're there yet. I just wanted to raise the question. So thank you.
Yeah, it's an item that gets tracked over cutover weekend on whether we're tracking ahead, behind, and what that is. I think the big thing that had to be done with these risks is, in order to come close to that, there had to be some things that were broken out that were a lower business processing priority. To be able to come close to that, but the team monitors how close they're going to be on those goals and those expectations. And we have to communicate those with counties, because counties have to set the expectations with their staff as well.
And in addition, we run our mock cutovers so that prior to the actual cutover weekend, we have a very good understanding and validation of what that timing looks like for that conversion event. So we'll be able to have that data in advance of the conversion event.
And Ryan, I appreciate the question. If you saw our whiteboard, it's one of the dozen measures or mitigation measures we were originally tracking in the work group. It's towards the bottom of our list of things we would want to consider.
Okay, great question. Any other questions or comments from our board members or state partners? Okay, any public comments? All right, we'll go ahead and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arnold.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Wanted to bring back a request that had been asked of the Benefits Cal team around being able to provide ongoing support to users for Benefits Cal. And this is not associated with the technical service desk. This is not associated with any of our existing forums that we already have, but this is, I'll say, in addition to. There was an ask that as we are rolling out new functionality beyond the training that we're providing, there may also be new users within the counties or new community-based organizations staff that are joining on a recurring basis, where there was interest in having what we're defining as a refresher opportunity for people to get exposed to what Benefits Cal has to offer, and then also incorporate some of the latest functionality that had been released. So we took back that request from the counties as well as from the community-based organizations, and are going to be moving forward with establishing a user forum. That user forum is going to start in January. It will coincide with the training for each of the releases that are not the releases, but each of the waves rather for the Calhoun counties for the first 5 user forums. And thereafter, we will also be having these user forums on a every other month basis. So for the Calhoun waves, we are looking at the month that precedes their go live. We will be inviting all 58 counties. So not just the production counties, not just the counties that will be onboarding onto Benefits Cal, but also the counties that will be onboarding in the future As we have seen in our previous sessions, we've had interest from the counties in wanting to participate in those as well. So every other month, starting January, we will be having these user forums. They typically run about a 90-minute duration is what we have used in the past for these particular sessions. We will be having one for at least one for community-based organizations and at least one for counties on a monthly, on that recurring basis every other month. And what the intent is to get people familiar with Benefits Cal as an actual solution, to expose them to functionality, to help with navigating some of the frequently asked questions that people may have, to help get access to the online help videos and tutorials that are available as well. So this will not replace the existing avenues that we have to discuss Benefits Cal functionality. It will not replace our design sessions that we have. This is in addition to, but aimed at those people that will be using Benefits Cal as users, specifically community-based organizations and county workers, to help with shoring up some of that knowledge and getting them more comfortable with Benefits Cal. Okay, Michael, that was the update on the user forum. I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, I appreciate this, Rachel. I think this is going to be incredibly helpful, and hopefully we can keep expanding upon that to educate the CBOs and also customers out there, as well as the counties, on how Benefits Cal works, how people can get set up, how to link their cases, and all the things that will enable online participation through this very important portal. So thank you. Any questions or comments from our other board members or our state partners?
I do have a question. This is on from Orange. I think this is very good for us to understand, because I've been hearing a lot of discussion from our community-based partners that they want to find out more about this. For the counties, if we're doing this the month before, and as we're looking at our training schedule and an effort to get all of our employees trained, is that contemplated as part of the overall of how it's going to fit in the schedule that Deloitte is preparing for us? I was just wanting to find out how we're going to fit that in as we try to train at least close to 3,000 staff in Orange County.
It was on, so as the team was putting it together specifically for the Calwin counties, we were looking at the training for the counties on CalSAWS as well as Benefits Cal, and wanted to make sure that we were coordinated in those efforts. We have also, as I said, opened this up to the 58 counties as well. So if there is interest in wanting to get in earlier as well, I know that Orange County is coming in wave 3, but we will be having a January session. So if there's interest in even wanting to get exposed earlier, there is that option as well. But then after the training, there will be that ongoing opportunity too. But we have, short answer is that we have coordinated this with the training team to make sure that we're aligned and that there's sufficient time for these sessions included.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know if it was on or if there was another person who was trying to speak right before that. Is there anybody else who wants to provide comments or feedback? Okay, any public comment?
Hi, this is Jennifer from the Advocates Group.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for creating this forum. I know that there are a lot of questions from the CBOs, and we're excited to have this ongoing space for folks. If they miss one, they can go to another. I had a couple of questions. In last month's training with Placer and YOLO, we had a commitment from CalSAWS to get a list of, this is my understanding, a list of delegated administrators from each of the counties so that when CBOs have technical issues, they know who to contact. Is there a status on that list being made available?
Jen, I'm going to need to take that one back to the team and we'll get an update out, but I'm going to need to take that one back. I unfortunately do not have a status on that one. Let me take that back.
Okay, thanks. And then my second question, it looks like these aren't going to start till January. So between now and January, we've been referring CBOs to contact Ask CalSAWS when they have technical issues. And sometimes the response they get back is that they're told to call the county. It just says call the county, which we assume means call the contact center. But eligibility workers don't seem like they are prepared to support some of the technical issues that CBOs are having with their accounts. Is there any way we can get a better system for CBOs to get support with technical problems that doesn't burden the county eligibility workers and the contact center phone line?
Jen, from the.
Jen, we heard your public comment on that and you're looking for something else. So we acknowledge that. And we're standing up many different support mechanisms. So we heard your comment.
So for folks right now who are told to call the county, should I guess I don't know what I should tell them because they haven't gotten support yet.
Yeah, call the county. We have the technical help desk setting up to be able to assist the counties in that customer service. It's a brand new help desk getting set up, brand new process that we're rolling out. We're adding this to that. We have Ask CalSAW, so we have many different avenues. And we need to get those things set up and stabilized to be able to do that.
Oh, so is there a timeline for the help desk then?
I think we covered that in the last meeting. We're starting with LA. We're going with each one of the Calhoun counties as they come up. The technical help desk will be available for each one of those counties. And then we're going to be looping in the former C4 counties. So LA County, starting with the pilot, wave 1 counties will be looped in as they go live. So that's the information that was shared last month.
Okay, so we don't have updated dates then is what I'm hearing. Like specific dates?
LA, we're running a pilot now.
Okay.
With each one of the Calhoun counties. They're coming onto that with their go live date.
Right.
Don't have a specific date for the former C4 counties, and we could come back with a date at a later time on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move forward to the next item. That's county sharing.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ricardo Miranda. I'm standing in for June today. I'm giving you an update on county sharing, how that's going. The county sharing program was started by your CalSAW's regional managers. And we're really seeing, a huge need in sharing information between counties and getting into those business processes that are important to counties. The county sharing program focuses on events and information sharing. And again, those events are focused on how migrated counties are using CalSAWs to accomplish their work today. Events started in August and will continue through the Calhoun migrations. Let's talk a little bit about event planning. So the topics are selected by your regional managers as they are introduced by your counties. So your county PPOCs, your implementation points of contact can come into contact with the CalSAW's regional managers. We're working to solicit those items with them. We're hearing them out. And we have a list already of brainstorm topics that we've gone through. The RMs are trying to determine what those topics are going to be. And then we select an event manager to work the topic. As you can see, there's already some topics that have been brought up, and we already did a couple of these. And I'm going to pass it over to Joe, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how those went.
Yes, thanks, Ricardo, and good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Mendoza. I'm one of the RMs for Region 4, and I wanted to talk through the next couple of slides, just kind of give you an idea of the work that's done with these events. The first one was in August, and this kind of gives you an idea of how we set up our agenda with the different topics and the counties actually presenting and demoing those topics. And also gives you an idea of the attendance that we had, which was really good attendance. For the very first one, we had over 200 attendees, 40 counties represented, 18 Calhoun counties and 22 CalSAWS counties. So if we can go to the next slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about the feedback that we got. And again, this was for the first one. So we had about a 96% positive feedback rate, which was great. The counties found it informative. They appreciated hearing from the other counties and talking with them through their processes. They found it beneficial, and also kind of sharing some of those real life examples as well was really good. And we found that not only helpful in the first one, but also the second one. So as we talk through the second one, if we can go through to the next slide. This actually took place back in last month on September the 29th. For this one, our topic was on workload management. So we decided to kind of split it up into two different parts. The morning session would cover the task-based workloads, which we have some of the subtopics listed there as far as like looking at verifications and how the routing rules, that type of thing. And then our afternoon session was on individual case workloads, and covered again some of those similar topics just to kind of show the differences between task-based versus individual caseloads, because we have counties that do either one or sometimes both, depending upon if they have different projects within different units. So for both of these sessions, not only for the August one, but also for the September event that we coordinated and had planned, we recorded both of these sessions. So each one of them are on the CalSol's web portal. So those of you who have access to it, it's in the county sharing folder. So if you have trouble finding it, just reach out to one of your PPOCs or RMs, and we'll be glad to point that over to you. Also, just to talk about attendance for this one, even though we don't have the stats on the slide, but I can talk through some of those things. We had about 485 attendees for this last event in September. We had 42 counties represented. We had all 18 Cal-1 counties attended, which was a great attendance rate, and we had 24 CalSol's counties attend. Positive feedback was just about almost the same as the first one, in the high 90s, which was great. And I think that was just a testament to the work that our counties did to give this presentation. Working through not only just the pre-planning that we had, talking through the slides, and also giving the demos. And just a testament to the work that they do every single day in the counties as well, to share that with other counties, which was great. I want to thank not only the counties that were attended, but also the counties that gave the presentation and all the work that they did that day, which were Humboldt, Kings, and Merced counties. So thank you guys for presenting that day at that event, which was, you guys all did a great job and good presentations. And also some of the feedback that we got, some of the comments we got were, it was well organized. Even though the event was long, because we did have an almost all-day event, they appreciated splitting it out into two separate events, and we have two separate recordings, which is great. So we have the morning, afternoon. The demo, they appreciated that as well, and the interaction, it was helpful. Just seeing the interaction, not only people coming off mute and asking their question and having that interaction verbally, but also through chat. We saw chat almost like blow up, and just like people talking back and forth and having those conversations as well, which was great. And the last thing was just someone said, thank you. And they said, please plan more of these events, which gives me to my last point, is that we are planning the next event, which Ricardo mentioned. We have a list of those topics kind of, that we're working through. And so we plan the next one for December, since we know we have a lot of things going on the end of this month and early next month. So we decided December would be the next month we would pick this back up. So our topic will be on EVES and PVS best practices, kind of the assignment and the processing of those things. So we'll be planning that. So PPOCs, just be on the lookout for those, information that will be sent out. And as we work toward planning that event in December. So that's all I have for county sharing, and I'll pass it back over to you, Michael.
Great. Any comments or questions from our board members or our state partners on the county sharing update? Okay, any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to our last item.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Apurva from IVNB team. I will be covering the IVNB updates. The slide which you're seeing on the screen is our IVNB readiness slide on the Wave 1 readiness. Over the past several months, we have been covering various work streams regarding the Wave 1 readiness. Starting with application, we tracked the readiness of CalSOS, BenefitsCal, Central Print, and Highland Imaging System. As of now, all 4 systems are ready. We are just currently monitoring the progress on the document and image migration from Kelvin to CalSOS, and it is on track. Under conversion, we are currently tracking the conversion prep activities for the cutover weekend. There was a very good table read organized earlier this week for the conversion cutover plan, and it went really well. We are also tracking the open CTT defects and the risk associated with that. As of now, the risk rating has gone down and the CTT exit criteria was met long back. So IVNV doesn't have any concerns regarding this. Under test, we are not monitoring anything because we tracked IPT, interface partner testing, batch performance testing, and image performance testing, and all efforts have been completed successfully. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. Under organizational, same as test, all the activities have been completed, such as UAT, county data validation, and process simulation, and they have been successfully completed with high pass rates. Under training, we continue to track the web-based training and instructor-led training for both Placer and Yolo County, and they are going very well, and we have been receiving very good and positive feedback from the county staff. Under implementation, IVNV is currently tracking 2 efforts. One is regarding the Go Live packet, which was the first distribution already sent out timely. We are just waiting to see the final distribution. And secondly, the county prep activities, which continue to go well. In a nutshell, we are just 10 days away from this upcoming major milestone, and IVNV doesn't have any concerns in any of these work streams. The few activities which I just mentioned are ongoing and they are on track for Wave 1 Go Live. So that's it. That's my update for IVNV. Any questions for me?
Any questions or comments from our board members or state partners on the IVNV update? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Apurva. And that brings us to the end of the meeting, John.
It does, Michael, and I think we're on time. I do want to clarify one point when I answered a question or a comment by Jen Tracy on the technical help desk. Right now, we are going through training and setup with Los Angeles County. We expect Los Angeles County to actually go live on the technical help desk in mid-November. And both Placer and Yolo will be going up with their go live. And we're looking at the former C4 counties to follow about 30 to 45 days after the LA go live with that. So those are our general timeframes. So I wanted to make sure that I clarify that LA County will not be coming up on the technical help desk until mid-November, but we are actively collaborating, training, and getting things set up. Placer and Yolo will be the first to be able to use that at Go Live.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, John, and hopefully Jen's still on and was able to pick that up. Want to appreciate all of you for hanging in all through the meeting and being very active and interactive today. This has been a good and productive meeting. Our next meeting is November 18th at 12:30. So set your calendars accordingly, and have a good rest of your Friday out there. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Bye.